Wonderful. So welcome to our Venus Collective Feminine Masterclass. We're going to take a deep dive into talking about and exploring and actually feeling this whole process of the Venus path. It's like the astrology behind the astrology, I like to say. It's really fascinating when we combine it with the Anana mysteries and really look at the whole pattern astrologically and how it affects us. So for the next few minutes, I'm just going to kind of be back and forth with letting people in. So if I seem a little distracted, I apologize ahead of time. Let me just close this participants list. So I have so many things open. A lot of different screens open. There's a lot of pictures that I'm going to be showing everyone. So before we do that, I'd like to just start with setting our sacred space with an invocation, with a prayer. And I use the invocation to the Great Mother. So just join me and just feel, just turning inward and feeling, and also setting your intention for this time together, what you'd like to receive from it. Dear Mother, I bow my head, heart, and womb to you. For you are the creatrix and the creation. From your womb, the 10,000 things are born. I ask that you bring me close, awaken me, and keep me in your flow of divine grace. Hold me in your ecstatic presence where all veils are dissolved, leaving only your whispering truth as my teacher. Let me drink from your cup of mercy and merge with you into the annihilation of my being forever and ever, dear Mother. Just take a second to connect and feel your body, feel your heart, and feel your womb, your sacral womb. And if it helps to bring your hands there, just connecting. That is the seat of your wisdom, of the feminine wisdom. And we'll begin. All right, now I can see everybody better. So where do we start? There is so much to talk about. So Venus is, as most of us know, Venus is a planet, astrological planet, and we may or may not know our Venus placement, like what sign she is in our astrological chart and what, house maybe. And so that's one aspect of Venus. And Venus is the planet of love and relationships and abundance. And, that's one aspect of Venus. However, what we're really doing here is the Venus. We're going to talk about the Venus that is this whole other path of Venus that's happening. I call it the astrology behind the astrology, because it's the synodic cycle of Venus. It's like what Venus is doing in the sky. And it's really pretty fascinating when you start to kind of get up close and see and interpret this whole Venus path. I'm going to share my screen. As we start to look at Venus, you can see that, for example, this is the path of Venus that she does in the sky, right? Can everybody see that? she forms this 5-pointed star through an 8-year period. Okay, this is what she's doing in the sky. She's moving around us, and we're not going to get into this because we can do a whole 2 hours on just this. So she's moving through the sky. This is the Venus rose. This is more accurately her path. Here's 1 point, 2nd point. Kind of hard to see them here. 3rd point, 4th point, and 5th point. These are in the way. 5th point on the side. Can you guys see my arrow? Okay, good. Okay, can't do the 5th because everybody, unless I move you there. Okay, 5th point. So this is the same as this, in a way. And each one of these points relates to a particular sign that she, begins at, like right when she comes out of retrograde, which just happened. The last 44 days, Venus was in retrograde. This is where she's shifting signs. And now she's going to go into a whole 18-month process or journey in a new sign of Leo, which we'll get into detail. So this 5-pointed star, each point is a different, relates to a different sign. And all of us are born under a particular ruling of this whole Venus star journey. So we each have a different Venus that is our Venus star journey sign, right? So depending on what journey, what journey was initiated right before you were born. And so some of us can be a morning star, some of us can be an evening star, and we'll talk about all of that in a minute. But I wanted to show you, this is so amazing because I find that this rose, and if you look at all the other planets, which I'm going to show you right now, this is the other planets. The path that they, if you track the path in the sky, this is what the path that they make as they go around in the sky. So this is a 5-pointed star, an 8-year path, an 8-year path. This is Mars, what Mars looks like. This is Jupiter. Jupiter looks very happy. Saturn looks a little restrictive. Let's not read into these. This is Mercury. It's like almost a heart. So I just find it fascinating to look at these cycles of how they appear to us in the sky. And that is why Venus is associated with the rose, and it's associated with the feminine. And Venus as a planet, just on its regular astrological, is associated with the feminine. But this star journey is associated with the collective feminine evolution. So what does that mean? It means that as Venus is moving through these different signs, and within each sign, she moves through each of the chakras, which we'll get into it a little bit in a minute as well, because I find that fascinating. She activates these different aspects of our feminine consciousness to come into awareness. It's like for us as individuals, but also collectively to awaken to the feminine consciousness overall within us. And so, in this way, Venus is a really, really, really powerful planet, in this whole star journey. And this dates back to all the way back to Sumeria, when we were kind of at the shift of the collective feminine, thousands of years ago, when we were kind of just coming into patriarchal system. and everything was being destroyed of the feminine, the temples, the stories, the ways of connecting, the mysteries. So everything was being destroyed or going underground. And the story of Inanna, which was one of the main goddesses, was told and retold and retold in conjunction with Venus. And so Venus, as she shows up during this 18-month cycle, half of it is she's a morning star and she shows up on the east side, and you see her rising with the sun, right? Every month she will rise with the sun as a morning star. And that has its own significance, which we'll get into when we go into the Inanna story. And then the other half of the cycle, and she goes into the underworld and the underworld. Cat's being very vocal. And then she comes out on the other side as the evening star, right? So the evening star, we also see her for 7 months, sometimes 8 months, sometimes 9 months in the evening star. And then that completes a whole cycle. Then she goes into retrograde again. And so that whole thing is 18 months, 18, 19 months, depending on how long she is in retrograde. Usually she's in retrograde about 40 days, sometimes a little bit more. This last cycle was 44 days, which is very, very interesting as well. And she went in on the date of Mary Magdalene, the Feast of Mary Magdalene, which I thought was pretty cool as well. So there's a lot of symbolism with this Leo cycle. We just ended a cycle in Capricorn. And so we can also look back in the last 18 months. And it's like, what did we, what were we able to perceive? What do we feel like we became more an authority in? Like, what did we really step into in the last 18 months, while she was in Capricorn? What did we feel restricted by? What did we feel, what did we master? Because Capricorn has a lot of qualities, and we're not going to really go into that. But just as our own self-reflection, we can look back at, what happened in the last 18 months, on my personal journey. What's been going on with me, and what did I step into? What was I able to master? And there may be areas that we didn't master, but we attempted to master something. How did we grow in the last 18 months as we went through this journey with Venus? And now she's going into Leo. So it affects all of us, even if we don't have really strong, signature of Leo in our chart, because Leo, we all have Leo in our chart, and we all, because this is a collective journey, we're going to be able to activate and embody those Leo traits as we go through this process. So I want to talk about the next 8 months, because like I said earlier, the Venus's morning star and evening star is an 18-month cycle, 18 to 19. But let's focus on the next 8 months, which is really the morning star. And as we're going through the next 8 months, we actually have particular dates that Venus will, each month, Venus will meet up with the moon. And as she meets up with the moon, she is going to be activating one of our chakras. And so why does this happen? How did we get here? How did they figure this out? Right? And so we have to go back and refer to the Inanna story. Okay. So The Inanna story is a story of the goddess, of the divine feminine of the time, that decided that she was going to go through and visit the underworld for the funeral, for the death of her sister's husband. And so her sister, Ereshkigal, was the queen of the underworld. And so Inanna decides that she wants to visit the underworld. And she is the queen. She is the queen of heaven, or she's known as the queen of heaven. And so she begins to, she begins this journey going into the underworld. And at each particular destination, she can't just walk into the underworld because she's not prepared. She has to be prepared in a way. And in this case, the underworld is really, the place within us that we don't, all of the things that we keep hidden, from ourselves, our shadows, the aspects of ourselves we don't like, the grief, the pain, etc. All those things that we feel and somehow connect to death. It's the hidden. And so Ereshkigal in this way is also her sister, but it's also an aspect of herself, right? It's like, it's her sister. It's her own being. It's the mirror that lives in the underworld and is the queen of the underworld. So as she moves through the next 8 months, she's moving into the underworld. And then the Venus rises, but is conjunct. She is conjunct the dark moon once a month. So if we don't know, the dark moon is right before the new moon. It's also called the balsamic moon. And so when she conjuncts the moon, she then, in the story of Inanna, she has to remove one of the pieces that she carries, whether it's her breastplate, whether it's her jewelry, whether it's something that identifies her. And there's particular ones through each of the gateways where she's identified with the outer world, right? Where she's identified with that she thinks is her. Right? So it's a way of really releasing the ego. It's a way of releasing these identifications we have on the outer. And as she is meeting as Venus, and I'm using Inanna and Venus, kind of synonymously, right? The same. As Venus is meeting with the moon, which the moon also holds all of our feminine consciousness in many ways, she has to remove one of these pieces of jewelry or identifications she has on her in order to go to the next level. She's not allowed by the powers of the underworld to keep going. And so this continues. And again, it moves, it starts at her crown and it moves one chakra each month all the way down. And as she's doing this, she's surrendering, right? This is the Venus morning star process, which is an initiation into surrendering and going deep in your consciousness to the things that you've hidden, to your shadow, to the conditioning that's there, to the pain, the grief. And this process is an 8-month process. This is the whole morning star process, is this deep dive into your subconscious, because it's not about getting there. It's about the process that you have to go through, what you have to let go of in each of the gateways in order to be open to a deeper reality about yourself. So she gets to the underworld. And now the only way that she can enter the underworld is naked. She can only enter the underworld without anything, without clothing, without jewelry, without her breastplate, without anything at all. And again, the deeper meaning of like really being empty, really being letting go of all of the thoughts of who we are and surrendering everything we think and that we're identified with in the outer world. And then she finally meets Ereshkigal, and then Ereshkigal is very angry, and because she hasn't been down there to visit her for very long, right? And so Ereshkigal actually ends up she ends up dead, being killed, and hanging on a meat hook when she meets Ereshkigal. And that is the story of Inanna. And so again, symbolically, it's like you go into all this pain and you're just dissolving, complete dissolution, right? It's like a death. It's a psychological death. And then, of course, Inanna has, she has let others know. She'd let, her maidservant know that if she wasn't back in 3 days, the very magical 3 days of the dark moon, of the dissolution process, and the magical 3 of the feminine, if she wasn't back in the 3 days, then to send help. And so then she receives help. And they're able to revive her, One of the ways that, and that goes into the whole evening star, which we're not going to today, because again, that's like another 8 or 9 months of how she actually comes back and integrates what she's learned. But one of the most interesting things is that one of the things that allows Ereshkigal to be compassionate and to open her heart, to allow Inanna to be rescued, is that she's in her cries, and she's in her, she's crying, and she's crying over her dead husband, and she's witnessed, and not only is she witnessed, but she's also like verbally acknowledged, and her suffering is acknowledged. And the little creatures that they sent in to rescue Inanna acknowledge Ereshkigal's pain, and they acknowledge her mourning. And then because they acknowledged her mourning, and they repeated when she would cry out, and her lamentations, they would repeat them, and they would echo them. And this allowed her to feel compassion, and then offer something to these little creatures. And then they, of course, said they want Inanna's body. And then they were able to revive Inanna by sprinkling on her the waters of life that they had received from the God of wisdom. And then she begins her journey back into the upper world, which is another, like I said, eight steps into each of the chakras and gateways. So, and then that's a process of reclamation. It's a very different process than the inner process of going down into the underworld. And so in many ways, this really is the feminine path, right? This is the feminine path of descent and ascent. This is the feminine path of death and rebirth. And in many ways, it also talks about, these aspects where we have been separated from our own underworld, from those things that we fear, from the things of aspects of ourselves that are in pain. And it's quite scary because it feels like death to go into, these processes. However, this is how we grow. This is how we move out of what we think we are, and out of the conditioning of the upper world conditioning, and kind of travel down into the soul of our being, rescuing the parts of us that we've rejected, that we've separated from out of survival. So in many ways, we've done that in the last 5,000 years, and our ancestors have done that because we've had to, in order to survive. We couldn't really show the deeper transformational aspect of ourselves. We couldn't really outwardly go into communion with the divine, through our own gnosis, through our direct knowing. So we've had to shut down these aspects of ourselves, of our senses, of our ability to communicate and within to the inner worlds and to the divine realms. So we all carry this, but we've shut it down. And so this process is really a process of awakening to that, and facing that which we fear within us, and reclaiming our fullness, the aspects of the light and the dark within us, right? The shadow, the aspects of ourselves that are scary, and that we push away because we don't feel safe, we don't feel comfortable. And we've kind of like hidden those aspects in the underworld, right? Where no one can come and see. And yet they're there. They're there. They're calling us. They're haunting us until we rescue, the things that we don't want to identify with. And also they become projections in our outer world. They become projections of all the violence, of all the darkness that we see. So this morning star process is really a process of surrender, of transformation, of realization, and of integration as we move every month through a different chakra, a different process. And because it's in Leo, again, we all have Leo somewhere in our chart, whether it's our, main characteristics or not. It affects a house in our chart, and it's like collectively we're all awakening to the Leo, to the queen, the queendom within us, right? Leo is usually the queen. It's all about being the center, about being centered. It's all about the love. It's all about the heart, right? So it's like, can we awaken to this within ourselves? And then letting go of the shadow, right? The shadows of Leo. And Leo's also, the lioness. It's also a lot of strength and a lot of protection. But can we receive that in humility, in the deeper surrender? Can we receive that in service rather than in, that angsty energy of Leo, that very fiery self-centeredness that can happen when we don't have things our way, right? The bitterness that can develop from that. The indignation, that's a very Leo quality, the arrogance, maybe even the desire for vengeance. It's like, can we face these within ourselves, the places where we are arrogant, where we are self-centered, where we are, in many ways, not compassionate, and don't want to be compassionate, right? And so these are all rooted, the shadow side is always rooted in fear, right? So those are rooted in fear. And so can we face the fear? Because that's ultimately what we're doing. And so that is the Leo journey in this Venus star process that we're undergoing. I'm going to show you a couple of more things. So let me show you, and then I'll open it up for questions. I know I've talked a lot. I don't like talking this much. I like to go into process. Like those are all sorts of pieces in my body that are like, okay, I want to dive in there. I want to work through that. Let me see. So I want to show you, this is the dates. These are the dates that we are moving through Leo. Hold on, I'm trying to move this over. These are the dates of each of the chakras that Leo's moving through, that Venus will be moving through, sorry. And each time, each month, 9/11 happens to be the first one, which is actually going to be the first class. We're actually doing a class. If you join us for the Venus journey, we're going to do a journey, which is we meet once a month, and then you'll have the course work, the papers to work through this yourself. But we're meeting just once a month right before, each of the gateways, so that we can come into deep union with these, with the themes of that month, with the chakra, with the gateway, with the particular sign. As you can see, Venus is going to be, even though the overall arching theme is Leo, she's going to be in hitting different signs. So there's kind of like nuances of that sign in each gateway. And then each gateway has its own nuance and theme. So for example, the crown is the ecstatic feminine in the feminine path, in the feminine medicine path, right? So the ecstatic feminine, it's our ability to connect with that bliss. And it's the crown chakra, and she's meeting in Leo, right? So this is the first one. It's like, okay, so when we're surrendering, we're bowing our heads, how is that related? And we'll have the prompts to actually work through those pieces, that relate to the ecstatic feminine, that relate to the crown, and our thinking and our ideas of ourselves. And that, of course, relates to the Leo and Leo, because this is Virgo and Leo and Libra and Leo. It's like, there's always many different cycles within cycles. I talk a lot about this. So there's a lot of influences. And this gives you an opportunity to tune into you and see, well, what's relevant for me? Like, it might all be about bliss, or it might have nothing to do with bliss. It might all be about Leo themes. So, you're going to find what speaks to you, because that's part of the feminine path, is about you becoming an authority for you. But we're going to lay out kind of like the container each month, and then let you kind of roam around in there and see what feels right, what wants to be released, because this is the morning star journey is all about liberation. It's about liberating ourselves from all of the ideas, beliefs, conditioning that whether we're aware of them or not, sometimes we're not aware of them. But we know we keep doing this lesson over and over and over and over. And it's like, how do we break through that? And as we talk about the themes that month in particular, today we're talking about the theme over the next 8 months, or really 18 months, depending on how you want to look at it. But as we narrow it down, you can kind of find yourself in there, and it will speak to you, because this is consciousness, that your consciousness has intelligence, and it will actually automatically come up. If anybody's worked with me, they know that stuff comes up. You just set your intention and it's like, boom, right there. You don't have to do too much digging. It's right there. And that's because we set a powerful container of intention, and what makes it really powerful is our sincerity and our commitment to ourselves and our path, which is the feminine path of awakening to our fullness, to our light, to our embodied light, not just light as our spirit, but actually like here in physicality, in this world. How do we bring that out? And the question with this Venus is, how do we bring that out with Venus? How does Venus want us to bring that out? There's many ways we could put this. In Leo, right? What are the themes of Leo to awaken this time around? And let me stop sharing for a minute. The actual dates that we're going to be moving through these gateways are a little bit there. Well, I showed you them. We're going to be meeting on Mondays once a month. So the first one happens to be right on that month, and I think there might be a couple of others, but the rest are either a couple of days away, 2 or 3 days away, so that it'll be really fresh. We'll be already in the energy of it. And then you can continue. You could do a second ceremony, an embodied ritual around that date or on that date if you feel called to, or just work in the monthly container. Sometimes you'll have a lot of epiphanies coming up. So you want to keep a journal and continue that process, usually for 3 days. No surprise there. 3 is very significant. Okay, so I'm going to open it up for any questions. I'm going to bring us all in, and if anybody has any particular questions or curiosities, there's no right or wrong answer. There's technical answers. I may or may not know them. Or anything you want to know more of. And then we'll go into a process. We're gonna work with this Leo energy, because she's already direct. She already went direct yesterday. And so I'm just curious also if anybody's noticed like what's gone on in the last 40 days while she was retrograde. And she was kind of ending one process with Capricorn and moving into like pausing, it's like pausing and reflecting in the underworld, in that place of stillness and peace, and just being there in between one journey and another. It's like preparing yourself.
I'll talk, so you're not talking by yourself.
Oh, thank
The
you.
last the last 40 days for me, it was very much like Venus retrograde, like what you would assume. Like people from my past came up, like past like partners and things like that.
Mm.
And then whenever that was like kind of squashed, like how you said, and I took the note, like you becoming the authority for you, like the feminine. So like whenever that was squashed, it was like me watching like rom-coms like how I used to when I was like 7, and then not really realizing, and then I was like, wait a second, I used to do this when I was like a child. And then really just like doing shadow work on like why were you watching these movies? What do they bring up? It's kind of like the hero worshiper type thing. So then that came up. So yeah, what I it was very aligned to what Venus retrograde I feel like would bring out.
Right.
So yeah, that was my experience.
Very cool. Yeah, thank you.
I had a question.
Yes. Hi.
Hi. Um, for the course, would you be talking about our own Venus star point and how that relates to the collective?
Yes, that's a great point. So thank you for reminding me. I haven't gone through my sheet of all the things I want to say. So Venus, right. So we each have a Venus and a Venus star point, which is different. And we actually have, and then if we're an evening star, if we're born in a morning star, that's a little differently than if we're born in an evening star. And if we're born in the evening star, because it's like the second half of the cycle of the 18-month cycle, then it's almost like you have two Venuses stars to work with, that are imprinted. And in many ways, this Venus star is also it's like our imprint of our feminine energy that we're here to actually bring out in a big way, right? So it's more than just like the Venus in the chart. It's really the signature of Venus, the signature of the feminine consciousness that we're here to bring out in ourselves and anchor that energy on the planet. So that doesn't always mean that, we're going to anchor it publicly. It doesn't mean a public role, but, it means that we're anchoring it within ourselves. We're kind of awakening to that. And then, and then because we're awakening to it, we are automatically anchoring that vibe, that frequency on the planet, because that's how it works, right? So that's why the more of us that do the shadow work and clear that collective energy, we're actually anchoring the light on the planet. So we're not gonna go into in terms of like each person's personal, because that's like we could do a whole reading on that. But each person can do a reading and figure out where their Venus was. I will share, I think it's useful to share the information so that you could see what your Venus is, the dates and all of that and all that information. I'm more than happy to share that. But then in terms of like that interpretation, like let's say you have Venus in Scorpio, well, what does that mean? But then that could be something that you might want to do on your own or, put it together if you're already an astrologer, right? But we can look at, we'll be sharing the dates and talking a little bit more about our own individual path with that. Yes. But I won't be going over like each person's because that gets crazy. And of course, it depends what else is going on the chart. And, I know a lot of you are astrologers in here, so Yes, thank you. Any other questions? Reflections?
This is super, it's not random actually. I don't know why I said that it's super random. But the movement of Venus is counterclockwise, right?
In the sky?
Yeah.
As she's going through the rows, I'm pretty sure it is, but I don't recall.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
think she does.
Yeah. It's this way. I know. I do the same thing. So I can answer you that later. I
Okay,
can
that's
verify
fine.
it. I can verify it. Yeah, I couldn't get, you know how they have those little memes that you see the Venus, being drawn. It's like, oh, I want to get, well, how do I get that on the screen? But I couldn't get it. Yeah. I had to show you a static picture instead. Yeah. So anybody else? Anybody surprised by the Inanna story? And we'll have more of those details. Like I will be sending out references also so that you could read it, but there's books on it. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely want to read more about the first time I ever heard about Inanna was through Ashley, actually. And moved here. So it's just interesting how all of these Venus things have been coming up. And yeah, definitely feeling really connected to this last. My Venus is in Capricorn, and definitely like it was also through my Saturn return. So like all these synchronicities, I'm like, holy shit. I learned a lot about self-love the past like 2.5 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
Speaking my truth, like, and now it's interesting when you said that there's been this like moment of stillness, and like now we're being prepared for the next chapter. And I feel like it's connected with like, the events of what's going on in my life, which it's like Venus is pushing me to speak more, to speak what I know. And it's just been really cool. Yeah, so I'm excited to dive deeper with Venus. Yeah, very powerful.
Wonderful. Yeah, I mean, Venus, as that feminine, it's like all of the mysteries, right? And of course, Venus is the love, right, which is the core of everything, in my book anyway. So, yeah, and how we relate to the world, right, which is also feminine quality. It's like relationships. Yes, okay, that's one area. But how do we relate? How do we relate to everything around us? How do we come into deeper intimacy with those things? How do we attune and feel? So, in other words, so that we can kind of separate, dissolve the separation that's in the way, right? Which is kind of like that outer yang energy. We want to kind of be inward and have that, that total, what do I want to say? Like total merging with, right? That, like relationships, that kind of intimacy. And in order to do that, we have to also fine tune our senses, right? What we hear. So it's all about going inward and fine tuning our senses, our ability to hear, to listen, to perceive, to feel these subtle realms that are within us, right? And so where do we start? We start at the place of our own conditioning, our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own beliefs about ourselves. That's what we're purifying with this journey. But at the same time, as we're releasing that, as we're becoming more and more attuned to that, which is kind of like this process of slower, deeper, more intimate, we're also going into the underworld, which is not a bad thing. The underworld is really it's like the threshold between the seen and the unseen, right? It's the divine realms. It's those subtle realms. And they can be ecstatic and blissful. And, and then we also find a lot of stuff in the astral field, stuff that's unprocessed, a lot of unprocessed material, from ourselves, from our lineage, because in that place, there's no separation. So that's becomes a mystery school. Venus was known also as a mystery school. And it's a very big part of the feminine path and the feminine medicine. And so I've been really attuned to this Venus since like 2014 that I first heard about it. And it like blew my mind. I was feeling like what you were just expressing, Vanessa. I was like, I could see this and that and that. And it's like, oh, wow. And I was in a Venus return because every 8 years you go through a Venus return. So if you're, the years, any multiple of 8, if you're 8, what is it? 8, 16, 24. It's going to test my multiplication skills. 8 times 5, 8 times, what's 8 times 4? 32, right? Am I saying that right? 8 times 4, 8 times 3. Okay, well, you get it. Any of those multiples, you're in a Venus return. And you can also be kind of like in a mini return, which we'll explain later, if it's like halfway point of any of those. Because you could be, if you're a Venus, if you're an evening star, and you're like 8 plus 4. So if you're in any of the in-between multiples of 4, then you could also be in a very powerful process. Like this process is powerful on its own. And if we just have to kind of tune in, because if we're not attuned to it, then we don't know how it's affecting us. And I find that it's fascinating because since 2014, which there was only like one person that I had found talking about it, maybe a couple, now there's a lot more groups and people are tuning into it. And I listened to this group about a few months ago, and I really didn't know this person. And so I just kind of hopped on to their class, and then I said, oh, well, what about, how do you look at, because I like to get other people's perspective, right? How do you work with the cycles of Inanna and each of the gates and the chakras? And they were like, what? And I'm like, yeah, she's moving out. And it was like, it wasn't there. And I was like, oh, okay. So not everybody's attuned to it the same way. And since then, I've actually found different ways, that others are attuned. There's only a couple of other people that I know that are like in the retrograde period, they move through all the chakras in a week. I'm like, I'm not signing up for that. That's like literally being disintegrated in a week. It's like, no, thank you. But anyway, it was just really interesting. And I find that as we grow in our consciousness of the feminine, then more and more, there's so many people now that are attuned to the Venus cycle and the synodic cycle, which is very different than just Venus in your chart. It's almost like the feminine is awakening, and it's, and you could see it by how many people are actually following. And I think like with any, astrology, this really speaks because this is that process of, death and rebirth, which is all about the feminine. I mean, if I could, just kind of like say one sentence about the feminine, it's like death and rebirth. It's transformation, right? And you'll find that if you really pay close attention, it's really mind-blowing each month as you move through the different embodiments, the different chakras, the different signs. And it's like, it'll blow your mind as it has with me ever since, in the last almost 10 years now. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So I thought it was time. She was like bugging me to and integrate it into the feminine path, because it is part of the feminine path. Yeah, it's just like, as you astrologers know, it's like cycles within cycles. You have the lunar cycle, you have so many cycles going on. It's kind of, my Pisces gets a little overwhelmed sometimes, like, yeah. So anyway, all right, so let's go. Any other quick questions or anything else? Before I take you into a process, I'm going to show you one more thing. This is just kind of the shell of it, but you can see. Oh, not here. Okay, here it is. So this is just the shell of, one of the one of the course pages that we're going to be getting where we can, we'll have the embodied ritual, which you can do and you can do throughout the month after that date. And then a space for reflections, because a lot of it is, you learning from you learning from your inner guru, the medicine that is within you and how it's coming through and the epiphanies that you'll be getting. And you will get them if you open and create the space for them. It's very, very powerful. And then just having space and creating like a ritual for yourself to give yourself the time to do this, and to just know. And it's about receiving the gifts, right? The gifts of the heart, the gifts of the light, the gifts of your own queendom. And setting that, and setting that that vibe on the planet for everybody else. You're part of the healing squad, whether you like it or not. All right, let's go into a little bit of a process and we'll take any other questions afterwards. So let's take a deep breath. All right. Just allow yourself to feel your breath. Feel yourself. Feel your inner world. And to all of these words to just kind of just see where they go, see where they settle. And just breathing. And if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes and bring your right hand to your heart, your left hand on your sacral womb. And so we're just going to invite our guides, our light beings that are here, our guardians, whichever you're comfortable with, and the Great Mother, and all of our intermediaries that are in the light and that are only here to transmit love and peace and light to us, that are here to guide us. And just envisioning an extra layer of light and protection in your field, and asking anything that's uninvited to leave your field, just 3 to 5 feet around you, or 7 feet, whatever feels right for you. And asking your guides to hold that perimeter, that sphere of light, layer of light all around you. And then just coming into your heart, coming into your womb, just noticing. And then inviting the energy of Venus. Venus is a planet. Venus as she holds the story of Inanna, represents the mysteries of Inanna. And just inviting Venus into your outer circle so you can connect and receive the influences that she wants to give you on this journey and in this moment. And just feeling her energy, just feeling the energy of Venus in this moment, just seeing where you feel that, without really a lot of preconceived ideas of what that means. You just see what arises for you, either in your heart or in your womb, or both. Could be in your whole sphere. And just asking Venus to shine, to light up for you. One of the gifts that she wants to awaken you to. One of the gifts that she wants you to embody. One of the feminine gifts. As you receive her, as we receive her, as we connect with her energy, and feel her not just in our heart, but deep in our womb, awakening to the medicine, feminine medicine that she has to give us. And just notice what impressions you begin to receive, knowing that this is the beginning of that journey. And perhaps we can get a glimpse of what the gifts are that is possible for us to embody at the end of this journey of the morning star, which is in April. And so just being completely open, feeling it in our womb. What does she want us to awaken to? Remembering that Venus is really an expression of the Great Mother, Source, as we all are expressions of the Great Mother. And she's an intermediary. And we can dialogue with her directly as a great spirit of Venus. And all of the feminine wisdom that she carries and that she symbolizes. So just feeling into this, noticing. And it can be as simple as just feeling love, light, compassion for yourself. Really stepping into embodying worthiness and realizing your value, which is part of loving yourself. And it could be very specific, and it could obviously be more than one thing. Many, many dimensions. So just breathing and letting yourself just receive. See yourself just receiving from Venus. Envisioning her light, her frequencies, her vibrations coming through, coming through your field of light all the way where you can start to perceive the possibilities. And we always have a choice. And so are you willing to say yes to these possibilities and reclaim your feminine inheritance, your feminine medicine, feminine gifts? Yeah. Just taking a few breaths there, and I'm going to just play a medicine song as you receive messages directly, as you open yourself to receive the messages, to receive the possibilities for you in this moment that's here right now. And that was part of the transmission of what Venus wants to give us. And just letting yourself receive that. You know that this is part of your birthright. This is part of who you are, and we're just integrating that divine nature of our being into our physical reality right here. And those qualities of the feminine that we all have, male and female, qualities of joy, of bliss, of being the seer, of being that wild woman, of being the love, of being the medicine, the healer, of being the creatrix, creating, manifesting, and of being the wisdom keeper and our root. Each one of those correlates with one of our gateways of our chakras. And we're liberating these aspects of yourself as we journey through them with powerful frequencies and medicine of Venus and the moon primarily. Yeah. So a couple of details that I didn't mention that came in were that, as you probably all gathered, because most of you know me, this is a very shamanic, transformational journey into the underworld that is also safe, that we'll have our protections, that we'll have our, that will be, we'll be cautious because I'm a Capricorn. That's just my nature. But we'll be cautious and we'll do it in a way that's safe. And yet we are going to go very deep and use sound, because sound is one of my mediums. And it's very powerful in dissolving and in transforming. And it's also can be very sweet. And what else did I want to say? Also, we're gonna do meet once a month, and then we will also and then the cost is on a sliding scale, whatever each person can afford. Each month between 20 and 45. And so if you registered for the first month, you can register for the first month on Eventbrite, and then I will send you a link to do the automatic recurring payment for each month. And then you can choose whatever you choose, that's what it'll be for each month, for 8 months till April. And we start next Monday. There's not a lot of time to waste. And you'll be receiving some papers that you can actually print to use as your little journal and keep a physical copy, or you can fill it out on the computer. But there's something about creating ritual and having that physical copy to journal and to write, if that calls to you. And we'll be doing a lot of embodied ceremony and ritual as well. It goes along with the shamanic part, which we'll be working with the elements and bringing in the universal mothers, to create that sacred space. So I'll be sharing some of the prayers that I use, things like that. So any questions on, I hope you guys did take a couple minutes to write down anything that was coming in. I didn't mean to kind of like skip right over that, but that's always important. That's always a given with me. You always have a journal. You can jot down, because you might forget. Most likely you'll forget when you kind of get back into your busy lives. So it's nice to be reminded. Yeah. Any questions? No?
I just want to say that was beautiful. Thank you.
Oh.
Venus, wow. She is wow.
She is wow.
It's just wow. Like, yeah.
And just so you know, I have Venus in Scorpio is my star point. Venus in Scorpio, and I'm a Taurus moon, so she's very present for me because she's a ruler of Taurus and Libra. So we'll be pulling on all of those. Those are the lenses through which I am, receiving her. And Taurus is all about embodied pleasure and love and senses and, like, how do we feel good here in this body? Which my Pisces kind of laughs at. So it's like, you just go into the other realms and you'll feel good. It's like, no, we got to do it here. We got to bridge those two. Be here and find the goodness and the beauty and the love and the joy. Yeah. Okay. So that's all of it. So we will begin next week. Everything is on Eventbrite. That's your first steps is to do that. If this process calls to you, is to go on Eventbrite, and then you will be getting an email from me with all the more details. Sorry. And Zen, she's always around. Okay, everybody good?
Thank you. This was amazing. It was very beautiful. So thank you.
You're welcome. And if it's a small enough group, I usually do some sharings and that we don't record. So we'll have a recording of that, that particular ritual for that month. But then, we can kind of come together. I feel like in sharing with the group there's so much richness in that, and so much healing and being witnessed and acknowledged. And, that's always my preference if it's possible. Yeah. And so we'll see. All right. Beautiful. Then I will, we're going to close out, and
Thank you.
you're welcome. Yeah, you can all.
Deep gratitude. So beautiful.
Thank you all for coming, and the ones that
Oh,
stayed
thank
till the
you.
end. Look, I'm not late today. I'm actually perfectly on time. All right. Many blessings. See you soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Blessings.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.